My girlfriend didn't show up to sign the marriage papers for the fourth time. The clerk nodded at a woman crying in the corner and said, "She was abandoned too. Why don't you two just get married?" 3 hours later, we signed our marriage certificate. 3 hours from complete strangers to legal spouses. And the strangest part of all is that this absurd, impulsive, and completely irrational decision ended up being the best decision I made in my 47 years of life. But to understand how I ended up marrying a stranger in a fit of desperation, you need to know who I was before that moment. You need to understand the silent hell that led me there. My name is Elias. I've worked as a supervisor in a textile factory for 12 years. I earn enough to live decently, pay my rent, buy food, nothing more. I've never been rich, never been the type of man who stands out in a crowd. I'm of average height, normal build, brown hair starting to turn gray at the temples, invisible to most. And after a devastating divorce 15 years ago that left me emotionally and financially broken, I learned to accept that invisibility. I learned to live alone, to expect nothing from anyone, to settle for a small, predictable existence until I met Sylvia. Sylvia was pure light, extroverted, magnetic, always surrounded by people who adored her. When she paid attention to me at that gathering of friends 2 years ago, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. She laughed at my clumsy jokes, touched my arm when she spoke, looked at me as if I were interesting, as if I mattered. At 45, after so long feeling like my life was over, Sylvia seemed like a miracle, my second chance at happiness. She proposed marriage, not me. 6 months after we started dating, one night after dinner, she took my hands and said she wanted to make things official, that she loved me, that she wanted to build a future with me. I was euphoric. I could hardly believe it. We set a date for March of the following year. I spent my savings of 6 months on the rings. For 100, that meant skipping meals, walking 5 kilometers a day instead of taking the bus, turning down invitations because I couldn't even afford coffee. But I didn't care. I was going to marry Sylvia. Someone had finally chosen me. March arrived, the designated day. I showed up at the civil registry at 2 in the afternoon sharp, as we agreed. I wore my only gray suit, bought 10 years ago for my father's funeral, ironed so carefully it shone, shoes polished until I could see my nervous reflection in them, the rings in my pants pocket, touching them every 30 seconds to make sure they were still there. Documents perfectly organized in a manila envelope. Everything ready, everything perfect, except Sylvia didn't arrive. I waited an hour, watching every person who entered. 2 hours, checking my phone every minute. At 4 in the afternoon, when the civil registry was about to close, I received her call. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Her mother had suffered a heart attack. She was in the hospital. She had to run. She begged me to forgive her. Of course I forgave her. What kind of monster doesn't forgive a medical emergency? We rescheduled for June. June arrived. Same civil registry, same gray suit, same rings that were still in my pocket, unfulfilled in their purpose, same stupid hope beating in my chest. Sylvia promised that this time nothing would stop us. I arrived half an hour early, so nervous my hands were sweating. I waited and kept waiting while other couples entered happily, signed, and left as families. At 4, Sylvia sent a message. A critical emergency at her work. She was a sales manager at a major company. Only she could solve the problem. She would arrive any moment. That moment never came. I forgave her because I trusted her, because I believed she loved me. September was the 3rd time. By then, Olga, the civil registry clerk, a woman of about 60 with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, already recognized my face when I walked in. She no longer greeted me with the professional indifference of March. She looked at me with something worse. Pity. That pity that makes you feel like the whole world can see your failure written on your forehead. In September, Sylvia swore by all that was holy that nothing would stop us. She told me she had taken the day off, that she had her dress ready, that she was so excited she hadn't slept. I arrived at the registry trembling with a bouquet of lavender-colored flowers I had bought that morning. The hours passed. Her excuse. The car broke down on the highway. Cell phone battery dead. Impossible to communicate. She explained it to me 3 days later with eyes swollen from crying. I forgave her again because I'm an idiot who confuses love with habit. And now it was December, the fourth time. The fourth time standing in this gray building that was starting to feel like a prison. The fourth time wearing the same suit that already smelled of accumulated desperation. The fourth time carrying the rings that had lived for 9 months in my pocket without seeing the light of day. It was 3:20 in the afternoon. Sylvia should have arrived at 2. I had written her 5 messages. The first at 2:05. I'm here, love. I'm so excited. At 2:30. Everything okay? Are you on your way? At 3. Sylvia, please answer me. At 3:10. Where are you? At 3:15. At least tell me you're okay. All marked as read, all deliberately ignored. And that detail, those damned blue checks that confirmed she had seen my messages and had chosen not to respond, hurt more than any made-up excuse. I sank into a green plastic chair, one of those uncomfortable ones they have in all government offices. There were 3 other couples waiting their turn. A young couple, no more than 25, who couldn't stop laughing nervously while she tucked her hair behind her ear every 2 minutes. An older couple, maybe 70, both holding hands with such pure tenderness it made my chest ache. And in the opposite corner of the room, sitting completely alone, was a woman dressed in a beige suit, high heels that matched perfectly, dark brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, crying silently as she clutched a white handkerchief between her fingers. Something about the way she cried was painfully familiar. It wasn't the loud cry of sadness. It was the silent, contained cry of humiliation, of anger you can't express because you're in public, of feeling stupid, used, invisible. I recognized it because it was exactly what I was feeling. Olga left her desk and walked towards me with slow, deliberate steps. She wore glasses hanging from a gold chain over her cream-colored blouse. Her eyes, tired from seeing so many stories in that place, watched me with a mixture of compassion and something that seemed like contained frustration. She stopped in front of my chair and sighed deeply before speaking. Elias, she said my name as if it were a sentence, as if just by pronouncing it she could summarize my entire pathetic situation. Son, she's not coming. I didn't answer. What could I say? I looked at my polished shoes, so perfect, so useless. I had spent 20 minutes that morning polishing them until they shone. 20 wasted minutes. It's the 4th time, Olga continued, lowering her voice, although there was no one nearby who could hear us. 4 times you've come here with your documents, your suit, your hopes, and 4 times she doesn't show up. Doesn't that tell you something? She has her reasons. I mumbled without conviction. Not even I believe those words. Reasons. Olga shook her head slowly. Son, once can be bad luck, twice can be a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern, but 4 times is deliberate cruelty. Her words pierced my chest like needles because she was right. Deep down, I'd always known, but hearing it said out loud by someone else made it real in a way I could no longer deny. She's using you, Olga continued, and her tone was no longer one of pity, but of genuine indignation. I don't know for what, I don't know why, but nobody does this 4 times by accident. Nobody who truly loves you would put you through this humiliation over and over again. I felt something break inside me, not dramatically, not with tears or screams. It was more like a rope that has been stretched too tight for too long and finally snaps with a silent crack. All those excuses I had accepted, all those justifications I had repeated to myself for months, crumbled at once. Olga was right. Sylvia was using me, and I had been too cowardly or too desperate to admit it. And what am I supposed to do? I asked, and my voice sounded smaller than I intended. Give up. Accept that I'm going to die alone. Olga looked towards the woman crying in the corner, then at me, and something strange crossed her face. It was an expression I couldn't decipher at that moment. She seemed to be considering something, weighing an absurd idea in her head. That lady, she said finally, gesturing with a subtle nod towards the woman in the beige suit. Her name is Diana. She got here at 2 in the afternoon, just like you. Her fiancé didn't show up either. First time I've seen her. But I recognized that face. It's the same face you've had 3 times before, the face of someone who just realized they were a fool. I didn't understand where she was going with this. I looked at Diana again. From my angle, I could see her profile. She was probably around 42 or 43. Delicate features, though swollen from crying, a rigid posture, as if keeping her back straight was the only thing preventing her from falling apart completely. And I asked, not understanding the point. Olga leaned towards me and lowered her voice even more. You two are here, both with all the necessary documents, both with available witnesses, both dressed appropriately, both just having been humiliated by people who clearly don't deserve you. She paused significantly. What if you just get married? I froze. For several seconds, my brain couldn't process what I had just heard. I thought I had misunderstood or that Olga had lost her mind after so many years working in that place, seeing happy and unhappy marriages alike. What? I finally managed to articulate. Get married, Olga repeated with complete naturalness, as if she were suggesting we order coffee. You both need a spouse for whatever brought you here 4 times in your case, and who knows how many in hers. You're both adults. You're both in your right minds. You both have everything ready. Why not? Because I don't know her, I said, and my voice sounded hysterical, even to my own ears. Because she's a complete stranger. Because that's insane. More insane than coming here 4 times to wait for someone who's lying to you. Olga retorted, raising an eyebrow. More insane than wasting 2 years of your life and $400 on rings for someone who doesn't even have the decency to cancel properly? I had no answer for that because, again, she was right. The twisted logic of her suggestion was starting to make its way into my shattered mind. At least ask her, Olga insisted. What do you have to lose? You've already lost your dignity. 4 times. You've already lost your time, your money, your hopes. What more can life take from you that it hasn't already taken? I just stared at her, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to get up and leave that place and never come back. But another part, a dark and desperate part that had grown over these 2 years of constant humiliation, whispered, why not? Why the hell not? Think about it. Olga said, straightening up. You have until 4:30. After that we close, and you'll have to come back another day. Or you can make a decision today, a decision that's at least in your hands, not in the hands of people who treat you like trash. She walked away, back to her desk, leaving me with that impossible idea swirling in my head like a fly trapped in a jar. I looked at Diana again. She was still crying, oblivious to the conversation that had just taken place, oblivious to the fact that a civil registry official had just suggested we get married, as if we were choosing partners for a school project. The idea was absurd, insane, completely irrational. Getting married requires love, trust, a shared history, future plans. You can't just decide to marry a stranger because you were both stood up on the same day. That's not how the real world works. But then I thought about Sylvia, about her excuses, her broken promises, about how she had read my 5 messages today and hadn't had the basic decency to respond, even with a lie. I thought about the rings in my pocket that had waited 9 months for a moment that would never come. I thought about Olga's pitying looks during 4 consecutive visits. I thought about going back to my empty apartment tonight again and having to explain to my coworkers on Monday why I still wasn't married after taking the day off specifically for that. I thought about all those years of loneliness after the divorce, all those nights eating dinner alone in front of the TV, all those family parties where I was the only one who arrived without a partner, about turning 47 and feeling like my life was already over before it really began. And then, driven by something that wasn't courage, but pure desperation, I got up from my chair. My legs trembled as I walked towards a corner where Diana was crying. Each step felt like walking towards the edge of a cliff. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I stopped about a meter away from her. Diana looked up, startled, her eyes red and swollen, her mascara running in dark lines down her cheeks. She looked at me with confusion and a bit of fear, as if I were a madman approaching to bother her at the worst moment of her life. "Excuse me," I managed to say, and my voice sounded hoarse. "I know this is going to sound completely insane, but Diana looked at me with a mixture of confusion and alarm. Her brown eyes, swollen from crying, examined me, trying to determine if I was a threat or just another unfortunate soul in this place full of broken dreams. She clutched the white handkerchief in her fingers tighter, as if that small piece of cloth were her only defense. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. She wasn't a passive victim. There was steel beneath that fragility. "My name is Elias," I began, the words tumbling out of my mouth before my brain could stop them. "And I know you don't know me, that this is probably the strangest thing anyone has ever said to you. But the clerk at the civil registry told me you were also stood up today, that your fiancé didn't show up." Diana blinked several times, processing my words. "And that's your business, why?" "Because my girlfriend didn't show up either," I continued quickly. "For the fourth time. For times I've come to this place with all my documents, my suit, my hopes, and 4 times she doesn't show. She didn't even give me an excuse today. She just didn't come." Something changed in Diana's expression. The alarm transformed into something akin to recognition, a shared understanding between 2 people who had just gone through the same hell. "I'm sorry," she said finally, and it sounded sincere. "It's terrible, but I don't understand what you want from me." I took a deep breath. This was all or nothing. The clerk suggested something completely crazy. She suggested that since we're both here, we both have the necessary documents. We've both just been humiliated by people who clearly don't deserve us. I paused. She suggested we get married, you and I, today now. The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it pressing against my ears. Diana looked at me as if I had suggested we jump off a building together. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "You're completely insane." Her voice went up an octave. "Marry a stranger? That's what you're proposing." "I know how it sounds," I said, raising my hands in a defensive gesture. "Believe me, I know exactly how it sounds, but think about it for a second. We're both here for a reason. We both needed to get married today for something important enough to go through all this, and we were both betrayed by people who didn't value us. That doesn't mean I should marry the first stranger who approaches me," Diana retorted. But I noticed she hadn't gotten up to leave, hadn't called for help. She was still listening. "You're right," I admitted. "It makes no logical sense, but nothing that's happening today makes sense. Does it make sense that my girlfriend did this to me 4 times? Does it make sense that your fiancé left you waiting here alone? None of this makes sense. So maybe it's time to stop trying to make sense of it and just do something." Diana remained silent, looking at me with an intensity that made me feel completely naked. I could see her mind working, weighing the insanity of my proposal against the insanity of her current situation. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why did you specifically need to get married today?" It was a fair question. My girlfriend, Sylvia, convinced me to get married. She proposed everything. I was happy just to be with someone after 15 years alone. But she insisted. Now I realize she was probably using me for something, though I don't know exactly what. "And you?" Diana looked down at her hands. "My fiancé, Francisco, promised me 8 months ago that we'd get married. He said he loved me, that he wanted to start a family with me. I quit my job to move to this city with him. I left everything, and today," her voice broke. "Today we were supposed to sign the papers, and he just didn't show up. He turned off his phone, disappeared. I felt a wave of fury for this woman I had just met. Francisco was a coward, a scumbag who had made her leave her entire life behind only to abandon her." "You quit your job?" I asked. "I was an accountant at a major firm in Guadalajara," Diana explained, her voice tired. "Good salary, stability, friends, my own house. Francisco convinced me to sell everything and move here because we were supposedly going to start a life together. And now I'm here in a city where I don't know anyone, without a job, living in a rented apartment I can't afford alone, waiting for a man who used me and discarded me. The injustice of her situation hit me like a punch. At least I had my job, my routine, my apartment. Diana had bet everything and lost. You need legal stability, I said slowly, beginning to understand. Documents that prove established residency here. Maybe for a new job or to stay in your apartment. Diana nodded slowly. The rental agreement requires that at least one of the tenants be married or have significant guarantees. Francisco was the primary tenant. Now that he's gone, the landlord can evict me at any time. A marriage certificate would give me rights as an established resident. I could put the utilities in my name, look for a job with proof of address, not be seen as a person without roots. It was starting to make more sense. It wasn't romantic love, it was practical survival. And you, Diana asked, why did you keep trying to marry someone who stood you up over and over? I sat down in the chair next to her without asking permission. We had already crossed all normal boundaries of courtesy anyway. Because I'm an idiot, I said honestly. Because after my divorce, I convinced myself that no one would ever love me again. I'm 47, I work in a factory, I'm not particularly interesting. When Sylvia paid attention to me, I clung to that feeling like a drowning man to a life raft. I ignored all the warning signs because I was too afraid to be alone again. That doesn't make you an idiot, Diana said softly. It makes you human. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the civil registry continued its normal routine. The young couple was called, and they went in, laughing, to the office where they would sign their documents. The older couple waited patiently for their turn, still holding hands. Olga was watching us from her desk without pretense. This is insane, Diana said finally, but her tone had changed. It no longer sounded horrified. It sounded like someone seriously considering a terrible idea. Completely, I agreed. But think about it. A legal marriage solves your housing and residency problem. It gives me a definitive answer for everyone who has seen me try to get married 4 times and fail. And most importantly, I paused, searching for the right words. It gives us both a little bit of dignity back. A decision that's in our hands, not in the hands of people who treated us like trash. Diana looked at me for a long time. I could see the internal debate reflected in her eyes. It was an impossible, absurd decision, but it was also a way out when all the other doors had closed. How do I know you're not a psychopath? She asked finally. It was a fair question. You don't, I admitted. Just like I don't know if you're a serial killer. But here are my documents. I took out my ID, my proof of employment, my bank statement. I've worked at Textiles Monterey for 12 years. I've lived in the same apartment for 8. I have no significant debts beyond my monthly rent of $350. I have no criminal record. You can check. And honestly, if I were a psychopath, I probably would have found more efficient ways to ruin my life than trying to get married 4 times to someone who hates me. Diana almost smiled at that. Almost. She took out her own ID and showed it to me. Diana Reyes Montoya, 42 years old, certified accountant. These are my documents from my last job in Guadalajara. Professional references. And you're right, if I were a serial killer, I probably wouldn't be crying in a civil registry on a Friday afternoon. We looked at our IDs side by side. 2 strangers, 2 shattered lives, 1 impossible decision. 3 hours, Diana said suddenly. Give me 3 hours to think about it, to research you, to make sure I'm not making the worst mistake of my life. We close at 4:30. Olga interjected from her desk, clearly listening to the entire conversation. It's 3:30. You have exactly 1 hour. Diana took out her phone with trembling hands and began to search my name on social media. I did the same with hers. It was absurd, pathetic even, that we were considering getting married while investigating each other on Facebook as if we were teenagers checking out a date. But here we were, 2 desperate adults doing just that. Her profile was private, but I could see some basic details. Photos of her at professional events, always well-dressed, always smiling politely. No recent photos with Francisco, which was strange for an engaged couple. The last public posts were from 6 months ago when she announced her move to this city. The comments were mostly supportive, but I also noticed several from someone named Sandra who said things like, I hope you know what you're doing, and call me if you need anything. Someone who had seen the disaster coming. Your profile is extremely boring, Diana said without looking up from her phone. Just photos of landscapes and 2 posts about soccer games from last year. Nothing personal. I'm not very active on social media, I admitted. After the divorce, I prefer to stay invisible. There are photos of you with a woman, Diana continued. Long hair, always very put together. I assume it's Sylvia. Probably, I said without wanting to check. I didn't want to see Sylvia's face at that moment. Diana kept swiping her finger across the screen, reading old posts, checking mutual friends, looking for signs of danger. I was doing the same with her profile from my phone. It was a clinical and strangely intimate process at the same time. We were dissecting each other's lives in search of reasons to run. You work at Textiles Monterey, Diana said. Let me check. She called the company's information line and asked to confirm my employment. The receptionist confirmed that Elias Morales had worked there as a supervisor for 12 years. Diana hung up and looked at me with an evaluative expression. At least you didn't lie about that. You can call my landlord too if you want, I offered, giving her Mr. Vargas's number. He'll confirm that I pay my rent on time every month for the past 8 years. Diana did exactly that. 5 minutes later, she hung up with a slightly more relaxed expression. Your landlord says you're the best tenant he's ever had. Quiet, responsible, never a problem. He says he'd trust you with the keys to his own house. Mr. Vargas exaggerates, I said, feeling strangely embarrassed by the compliment. I just pay on time and don't make noise. In my experience, that's more than most people do, Diana replied dryly. Olga came over again with a folder in her hands. Look, I know this is unorthodox, but I want you to understand something important. A civil marriage in this country is a legal contract. You can get divorced in 6 months if you decide it was a mistake. No one is forcing you to live together, to love each other, or even to see each other after today. But it gives you immediate legal rights, civil status, modest tax benefits, the ability to make medical decisions if one of you gets sick, access to shared bank accounts if you so choose. Are you trying to convince us? I asked incredulously. I'm giving you information, Olga corrected. I've been working here for 30 years. I've seen marriages that seemed perfect fall apart in months. I've seen couples who barely knew each other build beautiful lives together. Love doesn't come with guarantees. No matter how you start, at least you would be entering into this with realistic expectations and brutal honesty. Diana stared at the documents Olga had placed on the table. Official forms with blank spaces waiting for names, signatures, witnesses. So simple, so terrifyingly simple. My sister Sandra is going to think I've lost my mind, Diana murmured. Is your sister here in the city? I asked. No, she lives in Puebla, but she's been calling me all afternoon. She knows today was the wedding. She knows Francisco disappeared. I haven't answered because I don't know what to tell her. Diana looked at her phone, which was vibrating again with another message from Sandra. If I tell her I married a stranger at the civil registry 3 hours after being stood up, she'll come personally to drag me back to Puebla. My coworkers are going to react similarly, I admitted. They already ask me every Monday why I'm still not married after taking days off for it. And what will you tell them? That you met someone at the civil registry and got married impulsively? Technically, it would be the truth, I said, shrugging. I'll just omit the part where we met an hour ago. Diana made a sound that could have been a laugh or a sob. It was hard to tell. This is insane, completely insane. Yes, I agreed. So are we going to do it anyway? We looked at each other directly for the first time since this absurd conversation began. Really looked. I saw an intelligent, clearly professional woman who had been used and discarded by someone who didn't deserve her time or her trust. I saw strength beneath the vulnerability. I saw someone who had lost everything but hadn't completely given up. I don't know what she saw in me. Probably a tired, middle-aged man with wrinkles around his eyes and premature gray hair. Someone who had been foolish enough to be deceived 4 times in a row. But also someone who had come here 4 times, which meant I didn't give up easily, that I was persistent, albeit stupidly persistent. I need rules, Diana said finally. If we're going to do this, I need clear rules from the beginning. I agree, I said, feeling a spark of something that could have been hope or could have been just more disguised desperation. Diana took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts like the meticulous accountant she was. First rule, this is a marriage of mutual convenience, not a real marriage. We sleep in separate places, live separate lives, no romantic expectations. Agreed, I said immediately. Second rule, total honesty. If either of us meets someone else, if the situation changes, if this stops working, we say it directly. No lies, no excuses, no disappearing like cowards. Third rule, Diana continued. We split expenses equally if we share anything. I'm not looking to be supported or to support anyone. We're equal partners in this. Fourth rule, I added, mutual respect. No matter what happens, we treat each other with basic dignity. We've had enough humiliation for one day. Fifth rule, Diana said, and her voice became softer. After 6 months, we evaluate. If this isn't working, we get divorced civilly, no drama, no blame, no hard feelings. And if it is working, I asked before I could stop myself. Diana looked at me with an unreadable expression. Then, I guess we reevaluate again. Olga had been listening to the whole thing with a satisfied smile. So that means you're going to do it? I looked at Diana. Diana looked at me. The civil registry would close in 40 minutes. It was now or never. A decision that would change the entire course of our lives, or would just be a strange footnote in our personal stories. One last thing, I said, taking the rings out of my pocket. I bought these 9 months ago. I've been carrying them, waiting for a moment that never came. If we're going to do this, I like to use them, not because they mean eternal love or false promises, but because they represent an investment that would finally be worthwhile. Diana took one of the rings and examined it. Simple gold, unadorned, worn from so much time in my pocket. They're nice, she said simply. Diana held the ring up to the light, watching it spin slowly between her fingers. It was a simple, unpretentious ring, exactly the kind of thing a working-class man would buy with 6 months of savings. There was nothing romantic about that moment, just two broken people making a practical decision with unpredictable consequences. Okay, Diana said finally, her voice so low I could barely hear it. Let's do it. My heart did a strange flip. It wasn't joy exactly. It was more the feeling of jumping out of a plane without being completely sure the parachute would work. Olga practically jumped out of her chair with an energy she hadn't shown all day. Excellent. I need you both to fill out these forms. Full names, addresses, occupations, previous marital status. Olga spread the documents on the desk. We also need 2 witnesses. I can call my colleague Marta and the security guard, Carlos. They've served as witnesses in emergency cases before. Emergency cases? I repeated. This qualifies as an emergency? You're 30 minutes from closing, and you just decided to get married after meeting an hour ago, Olga said dryly. If that's not an emergency, I don't know what is. Diana was already filling out her form with clear, precise handwriting. I watched her as she wrote. Diana Reyes Montoya, 42 years old, accountant, divorced. So she had been married before, too. That was something we had in common. We had both failed at this before, and here we were, trying again in the strangest possible way. I filled out my own form. Elias Morales Ruiz, 47 years old, textile supervisor, divorced. Current marital status, single. Marital status in 30 minutes. Married to a woman whose last name I had barely learned 10 minutes ago. Marta arrived first, a stout woman of about 50 with a perpetually surprised expression. Olga explained the situation to her in rapid whispers. Marta looked at Diana and me as if we were circus freaks, but she nodded her head. I've seen stranger things, she muttered. Last month, we had a couple who met in the hospital emergency room and got married 2 days later. At least you have your documents ready. Carlos, the security guard, was a young man of maybe 25 who clearly didn't fully understand what he was witnessing, but was happy to help. Is it like in the movies? He asked enthusiastically. A marriage of convenience? Something like that, I said, feeling absurdly as if I were in a bad romantic comedy. Except none of this was romantic, and it barely qualified as a comedy. Olga checked our documents with professional efficiency. Everything's in order. Diana, I need your current proof of address. Diana handed it over. And Elias, your official ID. I handed it over. Olga checked everything twice, 3 times, making sure there were no errors that could invalidate the marriage later. Very well, Olga said finally. I'll take you to the office. The civil ceremony is brief. I'll ask you some standard questions. You answer affirmatively, sign the documents, exchange rings if you wish, and you'll be legally married. Any questions? Can I throw up first? Diana asked, and she wasn't entirely kidding. Her face had lost several shades of color. The bathroom is on the left, Olga said, pointing. But don't take too long, it's 4:10. Diana didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, she sat down heavily in a chair and put her head in her hands. I can't believe I'm going to do this. My mother is going to die when she finds out. My sister Sandra is going to stage an intervention. Everyone is going to think I've lost my mind. I sat down next to her. We can stop right now. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. I'll survive a fifth public humiliation. I'm used to it. Diana lifted her head and looked at me with tired eyes. It's not just about the apartment or the documents. It's that Francisco made me feel like I was worthless. Like 2 years of my life were disposable. Like I was disposable. And if I leave here today without doing anything, without making any decision, I feel like I'm proving him right. That I really am worthless. I understood exactly what she meant because I felt the same way with Sylvia. We're not disposable, I said with more conviction than I felt. We were treated like trash by horrible people, but that doesn't define us. I pointed towards the office where we were about to get married. This is us taking back control. Maybe in a strange way, maybe in an unconventional way, but it's our decision, not theirs. Diana nodded slowly. You're right. To hell with Francisco and Sylvia. This is for us. That's probably the worst premarital romantic declaration in history, I commented. Well, this is probably the worst marriage in history, Diana retorted. So it fits perfectly. We laughed. It was a short, almost hysterical laugh, but it was laughter nonetheless. In that ridiculous moment, sitting in uncomfortable civil registry chairs, about to marry a stranger, we laughed together. And strangely, that made everything seem a little less insane. All right, Diana said, standing up and smoothing down her beige suit. Let's do this before I regain my common sense. We went into Olga's office. It was a small space with cream-colored walls, a gray metal desk, a national flag in the corner, and a discreet crucifix on the wall. Marta and Carlos were already inside waiting. The older couple who had been in the waiting room were also there, having finished their own ceremony. They looked at us with curiosity. Olga positioned us in front of her desk. Diana to my left, me to her right, Marta and Carlos behind us as official witnesses. It was all very bureaucratic, very unceremonial. There were no flowers, no music, no family crying with joy, just fluorescent lights, official forms, and the hum of the air conditioner. Elias Morales Ruiz. Olga began in a formal voice she hadn't used before. Do you take Diana Reyes Montoya to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to respect her in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for all the days of your life? I blanked for a second. It was the real question, the point of no return. I looked at Diana. She returned my gaze with a nervous but determined expression. Two strangers betting everything on an impossible decision. Yes, I do, I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. Diana Reyes Montoya, Olga continued. Do you take Elias Morales Ruiz to be your lawfully wedded husband, to love and to respect him in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for all the days of your life? Diana took a deep breath. Yes, I do. Do you have rings? Olga asked. I took the rings out of my pocket one last time. I gave one to Diana and held the other. We looked at each other, not sure what to do. Olga gestured for us to exchange them. I took Diana's left hand. It was cold and trembling slightly. I slid the ring onto her ring finger. It fit perfectly, which seemed like a minor miracle or a cruel coincidence of fate. Diana took my hand and placed the other ring on my finger. It also fit. 9 months waiting in my pocket, and finally they were where they were supposed to be, just on the wrong hands, or maybe the right ones. I couldn't tell anymore. By the power vested in me by the state, Olga declared, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And just like that, without a kiss, without applause, without romantic music or rice thrown in the air, Diana and I became spouses. Olga handed us the official marriage certificate with a bright red seal in the corner. Marta and Carlos signed as witnesses. The whole process took less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes to legally change the course of our lives. We left the civil registry at 4:40 in the afternoon. The sun was still shining outside. The traffic was moving at its normal pace. People were walking down the streets with no idea that two strangers had just made the most impulsive decision of their lives. Diana held her copy of the marriage certificate as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment. "So," I said, standing on the sidewalk, not sure what to do now. "We're officially married." "We're officially insane," Diana corrected. But she didn't sound regretful. She sounded stunned. "And now what? Do we say goodbye? Do we see each other in 6 months for the divorce? Do we go out to dinner like a normal couple?" The mention of food made my stomach growl loudly. I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast, too nervous for the ceremony I was supposed to have with Sylvia. "Honestly, I could eat something," I admitted. "Are you hungry?" "I haven't eaten in 2 days," Diana confessed. "I've been too anxious, but yes, food sounds good. Is there anywhere nearby?" There was a small family restaurant 2 blocks from the civil registry. Nothing fancy, just decent homemade food at reasonable prices. The kind of place I ate at when I didn't feel like cooking. We walked there in uncomfortable silence, each processing what we had just done. The restaurant was half empty. The lunch rush had already passed. We sat at a table by the window. The waitress, an older woman named Lupita, according to her name tag, brought us menus and water without asking. I studied the menu without really reading anything. My brain was still trapped in Olga's office, replaying those words. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." "What's wrong?" Diana asked suddenly. "Sorry, you're looking at the menu, but your eyes aren't moving. You're not reading, you're in shock." It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. "Probably," I admitted, putting the menu down. "I came here this morning expecting to marry Sylvia, and now I'm having dinner with my new wife, whose middle name I don't know." "Reyes," Diana said. "Diana Reyes Montoya. Reyes was my mother's last name." "And yours?" "Elias Morales Ruiz. Morales is from my father, Ruiz from my mother, both deceased now. My father 6 years ago, my mother 3. "I'm sorry," Diana said sincerely. "My parents still live in Puebla. They're going to have a heart attack when I tell them I got married." "When do you plan on telling them?" "Honestly, I don't know. When do you plan on telling anyone?" "I don't know either. Maybe never. Maybe in 6 months when it doesn't matter anymore." But I knew that was a lie. My coworkers would ask on Monday. They want to know how the wedding was. I'd have to say something. Lupita returned to take our order. I ordered green enchiladas. Diana ordered mole with rice. Simple, comforting food. The kind of food you eat when your life is falling apart and you need something familiar. "We need to talk about logistics," Diana said once Lupita had left. "We said we'd live separately, but legally we share a marital status now. That means some things will change in our tax filings, work benefits, if any, that kind of thing." Always the accountant, I thought. Even in the midst of chaos, she was thinking about numbers and practical consequences. "My job offers basic health insurance," I said. "As a married employee, I could add you as a beneficiary. I don't know if that helps." "I lost my insurance when I left my job in Guadalajara," Diana admitted. "Private insurance is very expensive. If you can add me to yours, that would be really helpful." "Consider it done. I'll talk to HR on Monday. And I can help you with your taxes," Diana offered. "If we file as a married couple, you'll probably get a better return next year. I can prepare everything for free." We were negotiating the terms of our marriage as if it were a corporate merger. It was absurd and strangely appropriate at the same time. The food arrived. We ate in silence for several minutes, both too hungry to talk. The enchiladas were good, hot and spicy, just how I liked them. Diana ate her mole slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the first decent thing she'd eaten in days. It probably was. "Francisco called," Diana said suddenly, looking at her phone which had vibrated on the table. My stomach tensed. "What did he say?" Diana read the message with an impassive expression. "He says he's sorry, that he panicked, that he wasn't ready for the commitment, that he hopes we can be friends." She put the phone down with controlled care. 2 years of my life. I left everything for him, and now he hopes we can be friends. Are you going to answer? I already did. Diana showed me her screen. The message was simple. I got married to someone else. Don't contact me again. I couldn't help but smile. You sent that. I sent that with a picture of the marriage certificate included. That's brutal. He was brutal first. I'm just being honest. Diana blocked Francisco's number with quick, decisive movements. Now your turn. Are you going to say anything to Sylvia? I took out my own phone. Sylvia had sent a message 2 hours ago, right after Diana and I signed the papers. I'm so sorry, baby. I had a family emergency again. We can reschedule for January. I love you. The same old song, different words, but the same pattern. A vague excuse, an empty promise. The expectation that I would just accept and wait again. For the 5th time. What are you going to do? Diana asked. I wrote a short reply. I got married today. Not to you, obviously. To someone who actually showed up. Thank you for teaching me what I don't deserve. I attached a picture of the marriage certificate, just as Diana had done. I hit send before I could regret it. Diana and I exchanged glances over our half-empty plates. Two people who were complete strangers 4 hours ago. Now we were accomplices in the same shared madness. We should probably exchange phone numbers, Diana said practically. You know, if we need to contact each other for something legal or emergencies. Good idea. We exchanged numbers and saved them. My contact list now, said Diana, wife. The words looked strange on the screen. Unreal. We should also decide how we handle questions from other people, Diana continued. If someone asks how we met, what do we say? The truth. The truth makes us sound insane. We are insane, I pointed out. But you're right. We need a more digestible story. We spent the next 30 minutes fabricating a semi-fictional narrative. We met 3 months ago at the civil registry, both running errands. We started talking, discovered we had a lot in common. We decided to get married discreetly without a big celebration. Simple, believable, boring enough that people wouldn't ask too many questions. And the rings? Diana asked, touching hers. If someone notices they're identical, it's going to look suspicious. We'll say we chose them together. We preferred something simple and classic. Diana nodded, approving of the story. She was good at improvising, probably a skill developed over years of dealing with difficult clients as an accountant. We finished dinner. I paid the bill despite Diana's protests about splitting expenses. It's our wedding dinner, I argued, as strange as it is. We left the restaurant as the sky was beginning to darken. The streetlights were turning on one by one, bathing the sidewalk in an orange glow. Diana and I stood outside, not quite sure how to end this very strange evening. Did we hug, say goodbye with a formal handshake, or just go our separate ways as if nothing had happened? I should go home, Diana said finally, adjusting her purse strap. It's been a long day, and I need to process all this. Of course. Do you need a ride? I don't have a car, but I can pay for a taxi. It's okay, I can walk. I only live 10 blocks from here. Alone at night, I was surprised by my own protective tone. I had no right to worry about her. We were basically strangers with shared legal documents. Diana smiled slightly. I'm a grown woman, Elias. I've walked alone at night before. I know. I stopped, feeling ridiculous. Send me a message when you get there, just so I know you're okay. Something changed in Diana's expression. Her eyes softened a little. Okay, and you let me know when you get home, too. We parted in opposite directions. I walked to my apartment with my hands in my pockets, unconsciously touching the ring I now wore on my finger. My phone vibrated 20 minutes later. Diana, I'm home safe. Thanks for asking. I replied, me too. Rest well. My apartment greeted me with the same silence as always. A small one-room space, integrated kitchen, tiny bathroom, beige walls I had never bothered to paint. Basic, functional furniture with no personality. It was a place to exist, not to live. I took off my gray suit and hung it up carefully. For times I had worn that suit to try to marry Sylvia. On the 4th try it had finally worked, just with a completely wrong person. Or maybe the right person, I didn't know yet. My phone exploded with messages around 9 p.m. Sylvia had finally seen my message. She called 17 times in a row. She left furious, confused, pleading voicemails. What does this mean? Who did you marry? Is this a joke? Elias, answer me right now. You can't do this. We had plans. You belong to me. You belong to me. Those words hit me like a cold slap. That's how she saw me, as her property, as something she could keep on a shelf and use when it suited her. I blocked her number without answering any calls. I had already given her too much of my life. I wouldn't give her another minute. Monday arrived too quickly. I entered the textile factory with a knot in my stomach. My coworkers immediately surrounded me in the break room before the shift. So, asked Tomas, my closest coworker, did you finally do it? Are you a married man? Yes, I said simply, showing the ring on my finger. The celebratory cheers almost broke my eardrums. They clapped me on the back, hugged me, congratulated me effusively. I felt nauseous from the implicit lie, but technically I wasn't lying. I was married. I just omitted the specific details. When do we meet her? Asked Sandra, the afternoon shift supervisor. You have to bring your wife to the company picnic next month. Wife? The word sounded strange, coming from someone else. She's shy. I improvised. She doesn't like crowds much. But she can surely come to a small dinner, Tomas insisted. My wife Carla wants to meet her. She says any woman who finally caught you must be special. I promised to consider it without committing to anything specific. I went to HR during my lunch hour to add Diana to my health insurance. The representative, an efficient woman named Patricia, processed the paperwork without much questioning. I'll need a copy of your marriage certificate and her ID, Patricia said. I sent a message to Diana asking for a picture of her ID. She replied in 5 minutes with the image and a message. Everything okay? All good. Just adding you to the insurance. How's your day going? I had a job interview this morning. Medium-sized accounting firm. I think it went well. I was genuinely happy for her. Diana deserved stability after what Francisco had done to her. That's excellent. Let me know how it goes. Patricia noticed the smile on my face as I wrote. Newlyweds, she said with a knowing tone. You can tell by how you smile when you message her. I didn't correct her. I let her assume what she wanted. That night, Diana called me. Not a message, a real call. My heart sped up for no apparent reason when I saw her name on the screen. Hello. I answered. Hi. Sorry to call without warning. It's just that I need to ask you something. Sure, tell me. I got the job, Diana said, but she didn't sound completely happy. I start next Monday. Good salary, benefits, opportunity for growth. It's perfect. That's fantastic, Diana. Why don't you sound excited? Because they asked me if I had reliable transportation. I said yes because I didn't want to lose the opportunity, but the truth is I don't have a car. Francisco took his when he disappeared. The bus takes 2 hours with 2 transfers to get to that office. Where is it? She gave me the address. It was 20 minutes from the factory where I worked. I can take you. I offered before thinking about the implications. What? We said we'd live separate lives. I know, but this is practical. I work near there. I can pick you up in the mornings, drop you off at your office, then go to my job. We'd both save time and money on transportation. Diana was silent for a long time. That would mean seeing each other every day. I'm not sure that's a good idea. It doesn't have to be awkward. Just 2 people carpooling like co-workers. Co-workers who are married, Diana pointed out. Technical details, I said, trying to sound lighthearted, though my heart was pounding. I didn't understand why the idea of seeing Diana every morning made me nervous and something like anticipation. Let me think about it, Diana said. I'll let you know tomorrow. But she didn't wait until tomorrow. She messaged me at 11 p.m. Okay, I accept your offer. But you pay for gas 1 week and I pay the next. No old-fashioned chivalry. I smiled alone in my dark apartment. Deal. The following days we established a strange routine. I'd pick up Diana every morning at 7. She'd come down on time, always dressed professionally, hair up, a serious expression ready for the workday. The first few rides were silent and awkward. We didn't know what to talk about. We were married strangers living a shared lie. But slowly, the silence became less tense. Diana started to comment on funny cases at her new office. I told her stories from the factory, small conversations that meant nothing and meant everything. We were getting to know each other slowly, in reverse of how it normally works. First the marriage, then the friendship. One morning, 2 weeks after our absurd wedding, Diana got in the car with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one without saying anything. It was exactly how I liked it, black with 1 spoonful of sugar. I didn't remember telling her, but apparently she had been paying attention. Thanks, I said, genuinely surprised. You're welcome. I thought we could both use some extra caffeine today. It's Monday. Diana smiled slightly, and I realized it was the first time I'd seen her really smile. Not a polite or forced smile, but a genuine one. It lit up her whole face. Something moved in my chest, something small and dangerous that shouldn't be there. This was just a marriage of convenience, a paper marriage, 6 months, and we'd evaluate. Those were the rules we had set. But as I drove to her office that morning, with Diana sipping her coffee in the passenger seat, the rising sun painting everything gold, I realized something terrifying. The rules were starting to change. The weeks turned into months with alarming ease. Diana and I fell into a comfortable routine that neither of us had planned, but neither of us rejected either. Every morning, the shared ride. Every night, brief messages checking that the other had gotten home safely. On weekends, we occasionally met to go grocery shopping together because Diana had discovered that sharing deals on bulk products saved us both money. All very practical, all very rational, all except for what I actually felt every time I saw her. It was mid-February, almost 2 months after our impromptu wedding, when things started to get complicated. We were at the supermarket, splitting a large purchase of toilet paper and detergent, when I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. Elias? Elias Morales. I turned around slowly. Sylvia was standing 3 meters away with a shopping cart, accompanied by a tall, well-dressed man I immediately recognized from her social media. Ramon, her boss, the rich man she appeared with in photos from elegant parties that I had always rationalized as mandatory work events. Sylvia, I managed to say in a neutral voice. Sylvia's eyes moved from me to Diana, who had instinctively moved to my side. She noticed our identical rings. She noticed how Diana had put her hand on my arm in an automatic protective gesture. Sylvia's expression transformed from surprise to barely contained fury. So, it was true, Sylvia said with a venomous voice. You really got married. I thought it was a cruel joke. It wasn't a joke, I replied firmly. Diana, this is Sylvia. Sylvia, this is Diana, my wife. Diana extended her hand politely. Nice to meet you. Her voice was cold and professional. Sylvia completely ignored the outstretched hand. Your wife, Sylvia repeated with toxic disbelief. After 2 years together, after everything we shared, you marry a complete stranger in less than 2 weeks. 4 times, I said, and I felt the accumulated rage of months finally find its voice. You made me wait 4 times at the civil registry. 4 times you left me standing there like an idiot, while everyone looked at me with pity. And you didn't even have the decency to give a real excuse the last time. You just didn't show up. I had my reasons, Sylvia began, but I interrupted her. Reasons like him? I pointed to Ramon, who had so far remained silent with an uncomfortable expression. How long, Sylvia? How long were you with him while you made me believe we had a future? Ramon finally spoke, his voice deep and guilty. Look, buddy, this is complicated. Don't call me buddy. I cut him off. And no, it's not complicated. It's quite simple, actually. You two were together while she was using me for something. I still don't know exactly what for, but it doesn't matter anymore. The important thing is I'm not part of it anymore. Sylvia took a step forward, her eyes shining with tears that I knew were more from frustration than sadness. You know what, Elias? You were always too boring, too predictable, too little for me. You were never going to be enough. I kept you around because you were convenient, because you were reliable like a faithful dog, but I never really loved you. Her words should have shattered me. 2 months ago, they would have. But now, standing next to Diana in that ordinary supermarket, I felt only a profound relief. Relief at having escaped. Relief at not being tied to someone capable of such cruelty. Thank you for your honesty, I said calmly. You should have had it 2 years ago, and we would have saved each other a lot of time. Now, if you'll excuse us, We have shopping to finish. I took the hand of Diana, my paper wife who was becoming more real every day, and we started to walk away. But Sylvia wasn't finished. "This won't last," she shouted behind us. "Rebound marriages never last. I bet you'll be divorced in 6 months, and you'll be alone again, where you always should have been." Diana stopped. I felt her hand tense in mine. I thought she would keep walking, that she would ignore Sylvia's venom, but instead she turned around with a lethal calmness I had never seen in her. "You're right about one thing," Diana said with a clear, firm voice. "Marriages based on lies don't last. That's why yours with Ramon will probably fail too. Because if he cheated on you with her while he was with Elias, what makes you think he won't cheat on you with someone else? Betrayal is a pattern, not an isolated event." Ramon visibly paled. Sylvia opened her mouth to reply, but no sound came out. Diana continued relentlessly. "But our marriage, however unusual its beginning, is built on brutal honesty and mutual respect. Two things you clearly don't understand. So don't project your toxicity onto our relationship. Work on yours, if it even really exists." Diana took my hand again, and this time we did walk away. Sylvia and Ramon were left frozen in the middle of the cleaning products aisle, speechless and defeated. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They no longer had power over me. We finished our shopping in silence, paid, split everything as we always did, and loaded the bags into the car. Only when we were sitting inside with the doors closed did Diana finally speak. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," she said, looking at her hands. "It wasn't my place to defend you like that. Technically, I have no real right over your past life." "Oh, Diana," I interrupted her. "Thank you. No one has ever defended me like that. It meant a lot." Diana looked at me with those brown eyes that had gone from being unknown to familiar in 2 months. She was horrible. The way she spoke to you, as if you were disposable, it made me so angry. "Why?" I asked, though I think I already knew the answer, or hoped I knew it. "Because you're a good person, Elias. You deserve to be treated with basic respect." "And why?" Diana stopped, biting her lower lip as she did when she was nervous. "Because in these 2 months, I've gotten to know you more than I expected. And you're not boring or predictable. You're stable. Yes, reliable, absolutely. But those are virtues, not flaws." Sylvia was an idiot for not seeing it. My heart was beating so hard I was sure Diana could hear it. "You know what I discovered?" I said slowly. "That I care more about your opinion than Sylvia's. That your good morning messages mean more than all the I love yous she never really felt. That these 20-minute rides every morning are the best part of my day." Diana didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched between us, heavy and expectant. Finally, she sighed deeply. "We're breaking the rules," she said softly. "We said 6 months. We said we'd evaluate. We said there would be no romantic expectations." "I know, but the rules are already broken, aren't they?" Diana looked at me directly. "For both of us?" "Yes," I admitted. "For me, at least for weeks." "For me too," Diana confessed. "I think since the coffee, when you remembered how I like it without me telling you. It was a small detail, but it meant you were paying attention. That you cared. We sat there in the supermarket parking lot. 2 people who had started as desperate strangers and were becoming something completely different, something unexpected, something real. And now what?" I asked. "What do we do with this?" "I guess we do what we said we'd do," Diana replied with a small smile. "We evaluate, we talk honestly, we decide if we want to change the terms of our agreement." "And what would the new terms be?" Diana took my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "That we try this for real? Not as a marriage of convenience, but as a real marriage. No expiration date, number 6-month evaluation, just 2 people who are getting to know each other and want to see where this goes." "That terrifies me," I admitted. "Me too, but I think it's worth the risk. Don't you?" I looked at this extraordinary woman who had come into my life in the most absurd way possible. Diana, who was strong when I was weak, who defended me from my past demons, who brought me coffee exactly how I liked it, who turned routine 20-minute trips into the best moments of my day. "Yes," I said finally, squeezing her hand. "It's completely worth the risk." We kissed right there in the supermarket parking lot, between bags of toilet paper and discounted detergent. It wasn't a dramatic, perfect movie kiss. It was clumsy and nervous and real. And it was perfect precisely because of that. But life is never as simple as we'd like. A week after the encounter with Sylvia, I received an unexpected call. It was Hugo, a lawyer who worked in the same building where Diana had her office. We had met him casually when Diana consulted him about some tax issues. "Elias, I need to talk to you and Diana urgently," Hugo said with a serious voice. "Can you come to my office today, after work?" Something in his tone worried me. Diana and I arrived at 6 p.m. Hugo had us come into his private office with a grave expression. On his desk was a manila folder full of documents. "I received information from a contact at the commercial registry," Hugo began. "I started investigating after Diana told me about Francisco, and you mentioned Sylvia. I found something you need to know." He opened the folder and showed us several legal documents. Sylvia Montez and Ramon Vega have been in a business relationship for 3 years. Ramon is the owner of Northern Investments, a seemingly legitimate company, but I've discovered they've been using fake marriages to launder money and evade taxes. My blood ran cold. Fake marriages? Sylvia has been engaged to 4 different men in the last 2 years, Hugo explained, showing records. "You were the 4th. None of the marriages went through because that wasn't the plan. The plan was to keep you hooked, to make you sign documents you thought were prenuptial agreements or joint investment agreements, but were actually guarantees for fraudulent loans. When the marriages didn't happen, you had no legal protection, but they already had the signatures they needed." Diana paled. "Francisco did the exact same thing. He had me sign papers before I moved here. He said they were forms to add my name to the rental agreement. They were debt guarantees," Hugo confirmed sadly, "for a $150,000 loan you never received. If Francisco doesn't pay, and he won't because the company has already intentionally gone bankrupt, the creditors will come after you." "But we're not married," I said, trying to understand. "We had no legal protection, as you said." "Exactly. That's why the scheme worked. They promised marriage to build trust, had you sign documents, then disappeared before the wedding. Without an official marriage, the victims couldn't claim spousal protections. They were completely exposed." Hugo looked at me directly. "Sylvia, did she have you sign anything, Elias?" I thought back. Yes, about 5 months ago. She said it was a contract to rent a commercial space together, a small investment for our future. I signed without reading it carefully because I trusted her. Hugo nodded grimly. "I need to see that document. It's probably another ghost loan. You could be in debt for thousands of dollars without knowing it." The weight of the betrayal hit me like a hammer. Sylvia hadn't just played with my emotions. She had used me to commit fraud. The 4 times she didn't show up weren't cowardice or whim. They were calculated. They kept me hooked long enough to exploit my trust, but not long enough to give me legal protection. "There's a way to protect yourselves," Hugo said, looking at both of us. "Your marriage, although it started as a marriage of convenience, is completely legal. As spouses, you have certain protections. Marital assets are partially shielded from individual debts incurred before the marriage. But we need to act fast. I need you to give me copies of all the documents you signed with Sylvia and Francisco, and we need to report this to the tax authorities." The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, statements to authorities, interviews with financial investigators. Hugo guided us through everything with professional patience. We discovered that Sylvia and Ramon had scammed a total of 13 people with variations of the same scheme. Francisco turned out to be another operator in the same network. Diana and I were the only victims who had taken an unpredictable action, marrying someone else. That impulsive and absurd decision at the civil registry, that marriage of desperation between 2 strangers, had accidentally saved us from devastating financial consequences. The guarantees we had signed couldn't be fully executed because our marital status had changed before the fraudulent loans were activated. We would still face some legal problems, but nothing compared to what it would have been. "The irony is beautiful," Diana commented one night as we reviewed documents in my apartment. which was now technically our apartment since she had officially moved in after we decided to try this for real. We got married out of desperation, and it ended up being the best tactical decision possible. It wasn't just tactical, I said, taking her hand. Maybe it started that way, but it turned into something more. Diana smiled. That genuine smile she now gave me daily. You're right. The tactical part was just a convenient excuse for our brains that didn't want to admit we were taking a huge emotional risk. 3 months later, in May, Hugo called us with news. The public prosecutor's office has filed formal charges against Sylvia, Ramon, and Francisco. Fraud, tax evasion, document forgery. They're facing between 8 and 12 years in prison if convicted. And with the evidence we've gathered from 13 different victims, a conviction is almost certain. I felt a cold satisfaction. It wasn't revenge exactly, it was justice. Sylvia had treated me like disposable trash, had played with my emotions, had tried to ruin me financially. Now she was facing the consequences of her actions, not because of my direct intervention, but because the authorities were doing their job. And us? Diana asked. We're completely free, Hugo confirmed. The guarantees you signed have been invalidated by the court. You owe nothing, you're clean. You can move on with your lives. Diana and I left Hugo's office that afternoon with a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. The dark chapter was over. Sylvia and Francisco would pay for their crimes. We were free. You know what I want to do? Diana said as we walked to the car, holding hands. What? I want to renew our vows. Not because the original marriage doesn't count, but because I want to do it again, choosing you consciously, not out of desperation, but out of love. My heart expanded in my chest. Love. Diana stopped in the middle of the street and looked at me directly. Yes, Elias. Love. I love you. I know it sounds ridiculous after only 5 months, and I know we started in the strangest possible way. But I love you. I love your stability that Sylvia called boring. I love your reliability that she despised. I love how you bring me coffee in the mornings and how you always ask if I got home okay. Even though we live together now, I love that you defend me and that you let me defend you. I love that we turned something absurd into something beautiful. Tears were running down my cheeks without me being able to stop them. I love you too, Diana. For weeks, maybe months, but I was afraid to say it because it sounded impossible. How can you love someone you met this way? I think the way we met doesn't matter as much as what we built afterward, Diana said, wiping my tears with her thumbs. Some people meet in coffee shops, others on dating apps, others at friends' weddings. We met at the civil registry after being abandoned on the same day. It's our story, and I like our story. A year after that absurd Friday in December, Diana and I renewed our vows, this time with her sister Sandra traveling from Puebla, with my coworkers from the factory, with Hugo as the official witness. This time there were flowers, music, happy tears, sincere hugs. This time it wasn't a marriage of convenience, but a celebration of real love. Olga, the civil registry official who had suggested this madness in the first place, came as a special guest. I knew it would work, she whispered to me during the reception. 30 years working there, you develop an instinct. I saw something in you too that day. Desperation, yes, but also strength. I knew if you gave each other a chance, you could build something real. Thank you, I said sincerely, for seeing what we couldn't see at that moment. As I danced with Diana that night, our first official dance as a couple who chose to be together, I reflected on the impossible journey we had made. I was abandoned 4 times by the wrong person to find a right person on the 5th try. Sometimes the most painful ending is just a disguised beginning. Sometimes the most absurd decision is the wisest. Sometimes 2 broken people can come together and create something completely whole. What are you thinking about? Diana asked, her head resting on my shoulder. That it was worth it, I said honestly. Every humiliation, every pain, every moment of doubt was worth it because it led me to you. Diana lifted her face and kissed me softly. It led me to you too, and I wouldn't change a thing about our strange, perfect story.